thank you so much, those that were with us. And without really taking much of your time, we pray that we're going to have a good time together in this chat. So I hand over to Adrian.
Lovely. Yeah, so last week we began talking about why marriage, and we also talked about the marriage covenant.
Yeah.
Now, what we're going to do a quick recap tonight of what we talked about last week. Now we've taken 2 weeks to talk about this because this is the foundation of everything else that we're going to talk about. So if we get this right, then we'll be able to build on a solid and proper foundation. If we don't get this right, then we are building on some shaky foundation.
True.
So this is why we'll just have a quick run through what we talked about. Now, the marriage covenant was not done in full because we ran out of time. So there was one element that was not covered. So we are going to cover that element in tonight's conversation.
Yeah.
We'll cover that, and then we will also talk about. We will also answer some of the questions that have been sent to us. So we were saying last week that we were saying why marriage. That was the question that we posed. Why marriage?
Yes.
And we said the only way we could answer that question is to try and find out whose idea marriage was. Yeah. And we established last week that marriage actually was God's idea.
Yes, it is.
So before there was any political institutions, before there was any courts, before there was any schools, before there was anything, before the society evolved to what it is now, God was, and God instituted marriage. So it was actually God's idea. And last week we talked about how God formed a woman. He caused Adam, the man at that time, to go into a deep sleep.
Yes.
And then on the side of his rib, he took out a woman.
Yes.
And then presented that woman to Adam.
Yeah.
So, and we joked last week, we were saying there were animals standing on both sides, and the very first marriage was actually ordained or was officiated by God himself. So God took this lady after after she was formed from a man's rib, and then he took that lady and walked her as the father.
Yes.
And walked her down the aisle and presented her to the man.
Yes.
And the man looked at her and he said, wow, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh.
Yes.
She shall be called woman.
Yeah.
And then God, of course, performed the ceremony, and the two were joined.
Yes, and he was the witness in that. And
God was a witness in that. So we see that the very first marriage was actually conducted by God himself.
Yes.
And so marriage was God's idea. That's what we established last week.
And when he put in this idea, he said it was a good thing.
Yes.
Marriage in itself has always been good. But then we are having these conversations because we know that when we go there, the thing that God initiated and created and had an idea that it was going to be good somehow becomes an issue with us. So that is why we are having this conversation. And when we see God performing the marriage, he was in the midst of Adam and Eve. That made him the third person. And that's why we see that a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. So the idea was God's, and he's the one who witnessed the first ceremony of marriage. And so it's always good to have the third person who is God in the marriage when we start and when we enter into marriage.
Yeah, so that's what we covered. So we can't change the thing that God had instituted. We can't change. So the only way we can do it according to the way he desired it to be done is to look at what his initial plans were. And then when we look at that, then we imitate that and we follow that. So we covered that. We won't spend a lot of time talking about that. And the other thing now that we came to was to try and establish what a marriage covenant is. And we said that a marriage covenant is entered into when two people, a man and a woman, exchange vows. So we also said that in a covenant, there are 3, a marriage covenant in this case, there are 3 things that normally would be present. So we talked about the promise, we talked about the exchange, and we talked about bonding. Now, bonding was not covered. We never covered bonding last week.
Yes.
And that's what we are going to try and cover in this session. We'll try and cover bonding, but we covered the promise, we covered exchange. But for the benefit of those that were not there last week, and also just to try and do a quick recap so that we all bring ourselves to a place where we all can understand, we will just quickly look at that one. But just before we do that, we might just want to connect with you quickly and just share one more thing.
Yeah.
That is something that we would love you to think about.
So, if there is a couple watching, husband and wife, or if there's maybe just one party watching, this is to you, and those that are not yet married, and it's also to you. We are trying to establish, before we go into much of the covenant, what is one of the patterns of behavior that you established in the first year of your marriage, for better or for worse. So what is that one pattern of behavior that you established, for better or for worse, in the first year of your marriage? We are going to check with you. We just want probably for you to tell us for better, because we don't want to open up and you go and start saying, oh, why did you write that? So we just want you guys probably to share with us for better, probably along towards the end of the conversation. You share with us for better.
Yeah.
And for worse, just have a think and see how you have improved on it. If it's still lingering, we'll look at that. Towards the end, we'll come and share what we established in our first marriage, in our first year of our marriage. What was for better, what was for worse. We'll come and share.
What was better, what was for worse.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, so that's coming from the covenant. So in the covenant, we make a promise. So the promise I made to her when she was presented to me was that I will love you.
Yes.
That's the promise that I made. That's the vow that I made. And, that's the oath that I made. And at that point, when I was making that promise, it was at that point when we were actually entering into a marriage covenant. So I promised to love you. I promised to cherish you. And, I promised to be with you throughout, the challenging times, whatever the circumstances. I promised I was going to be there.
Yes.
That was the vow that I made. Now, remember that the vow is not a simple thing. When you make a vow, when you make an oath, it actually invokes on the divine. So this is why we're saying we are making that promise, and that we are making that vow in the presence first of God, and also in the presence of other fellow human beings. So there will be witnesses.
Yeah.
So this is a very serious promise I'm making. I'm actually entering into a covenant.
Yeah.
And by its nature, it's supposed to be for life.
Yeah.
So I promise you, and I declare all those things, and So did you want to say something?
No.
Okay.
Someone, did you say you? Yeah, no, it's okay. You can go.
Yeah. So that's the promise. So that's what is involved in the promise as we enter into a marriage covenant. The other thing that we established was that there will be exchange.
Yes.
Yeah. So there will be exchange. So in there, as we get in there, the first thing that we are looking at is we are exchanging the strength.
Yes.
For weakness. So we said that where she's weak and I am strong, then we can do an exchange.
Yes.
So I will cover your weakness and you cover my weakness.
Yeah.
Then I'll bring my strength.
Yeah.
And then you bring your strength.
Yes.
So that now we can have we can complement each other, and then we can have at least a much bigger impact.
Yes.
Yeah, we can have a much bigger impact. So that's what is happening. So we cover each other's weaknesses, and then we amplify each other's strengths.
That's right.
So we don't really focus. So that's one of the things that is happening. That's the exchange that's going on. The other exchange that's going on is the exchange of possessions.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is yours, once we enter into that covenant, becomes mine. Yeah. And what is mine becomes yours. Yeah. So it's no longer a case of, it's yours, it's mine. So we take away the why from the word yours. Literally, the word yours is WORS.
Y-O-U-R.
Yes. R-S.
Yes.
So we just take away the Y.
Yeah.
So there is no further questions now to ask, but why can't I use this? No, this is mine. No, all that is taken away.
Yeah.
We put everything together, all the resources together, and it becomes ours.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where, I think this is where now the marriage contract and the marriage covenant, this is where they part company.
That's right.
Yeah, yes. This is where they part company, because in a contract, each party is going there with their own self-interest. So they go in there saying, okay, this is this is mine, and they try by all means to try and limit the responsibilities and the liabilities while increasing their benefit. So that's the difference. And we said last week that nowadays people go into prenuptial sort of arrangements. Yeah. These are the sort of arrangements where you enter into a contract to preserve what is yours.
Yes.
And then the other person also preserves what is theirs, so you don't bring them together, so that in case this thing doesn't work, you can go your way with your stuff, I'll go my way with my stuff. Now that is already defeating the whole purpose, because when you go in there saying keep your stuff, keep my stuff, there isn't that serious commitment, because after all, at the end of the day, if we were to call it quit, I'll just take my stuff and go. Take your stuff and go. So that's where we part company. So that's one of the things that we said is happening. There's also the exchange. We said there's also the exchange of families.
Families, yeah.
Yeah. So this is why
Naomi, your people shall be my people. Your people shall be my people shall be your people. So there is also exchange of families, and we become one unity.
Yeah.
There's also the exchange of bodies. Your body becomes mine.
Yeah.
My body becomes yours.
Yes. So
there's marriage covenant.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what is happening. And ultimately now there is an exchange of symbols to show that this is a commitment, or this is the commitment I have to this person.
Yes.
And in this case we are talking about a ring.
Yes.
So we put a ring on each other, and this just reminds us every time wherever we go that I have the commitment, and everyone knows that I am in a commitment, in a serious commitment with someone. If I took that out, then everyone might just have a go, because I haven't got any symbol to show. I have to explain.
Yeah.
But we give each other a symbol so that we stay away from that. Yes. So that's what we covered. Now, the part that was left out was the bonding. The bonding aspect was the part that we left out last week. Now, a marriage covenant, the ultimate bonding of the people, because the Bible says that, and for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother's house and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So the actual becoming of one flesh is something that ultimately happens through sexual intimacy. Yeah. So that's the bonding. So there's a bonding of the flesh, and there's a bonding of emotions, and there's a joining, ultimate joining into that relationship as one.
Yes.
So you're no longer two individuals. Now you are one person.
Yeah.
You are two separate people, but you are one. And that's the mystery of marriage. Two people becoming one.
Yes.
So so God was trying to duplicate what is there in heaven. So there there is a Trinity where God in three persons becoming one.
Yes.
So there's three persons there, but it's one
God.
One God. Yeah, the difference is just the functions and so on. So that's what God was trying to duplicate, was trying to portray in the marriage covenant. So that's what is there. And just to say something about sexual intimacy. This is one of the things that is a preserve of marriage.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that is a preserve of marriage. So you don't get into it before you get into a committed relationship, or before you get into a covenant. Now, the reason for that is not because we are trying to keep people away from what they may call, you know, enjoyment, so to speak.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Right, done in the right context at the right time when we are married. It's a good thing, but obviously it's confined in the premises of marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we would encourage, especially young people, that before you make that commitment to someone, to try and stay away from that intimacy of the flesh.
Yeah.
Because it's got its own baggage if one gets involved into it before they are committed to a relationship. It has its own baggage, and also because that's what brings the joining of the flesh. So if you get involved into that and then you don't stay in a committed relationship, what happens there is that you have been joined to this one that now you don't get committed to. So you take a part of them and you go away with that.
Yeah.
So, and then imagine that there is 3 of us. So you have taken 3 parts from 3 different individuals, and you take it with you. So that's extra baggage that now, you know, God helping will have to be undone.
Yes.
Will have to come and undo, because it's just extra baggage. So our personal recommendation is that you stay away before you make that commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is something that we are going to cover in a bit more in depth when we start talking about you know, the actual individual elements. So next week we will be looking at love itself.
Yes.
The promise of love.
The promise of love from the covenant, yeah?
Yeah, the promise of love, because obviously we know that when we are courting, there is that, you know, feeling of excitement.
Yes.
You know, because I found someone that I've fallen in love with. I love them so much. You know, I'm so intimate with them. You know, I'm just enjoying the company and so on. But the moment we say I do, we enter into a covenant and we cross over to the other side. Now marriage begins.
Yes.